Hello, everyone. I'm John, founder CEO of SendBird. Current name is Kim Dong-shin. Really excited to be here and very honored to be able to present in front of the distinguished members of the community. On a personal side of things, actually, my dream was to become a scientist ever since I was like 6 years old. So apparently, I failed at that dream, but still is yearning to get back to studying nuclear fusion and somehow bring cold fusion to reality and solve humans' energy crisis once and for all. But with that said, hopefully that would be the life after December potentially. Anyway, I do have a couple of slides to kind of walk through our December story, how we kind of came to be, what our early days look like, and then also going to share a little bit about what we actually do as a company. Let me bring up the slides. Okay, so here we go. Bring this around. Just a little bit about me, CEO of SendBird. We went through a program called Y Combinator, the world's first, I think, accelerator. You may know companies like DoorDash, Airbnb, maybe Stripe, Dropbox. A lot of these companies went through Y Combinator and now are publicly traded companies or massive scale privatized companies. I believe there's about close to 80, 90 companies that became unicorns out of Y Combinator, and we happen to be one of them. So we're very, very excited. They backed about, I believe, 4,000 companies historically. So, good portion became unicorns. I'm also general partner at Valon Capital. It's a early stage investing venture capital that I founded. Currently a solo GP. So basically, it's just me writing checks to early stage founders. Personally have invested in about 40 startups as angels and then another 40 companies through the fund. So total of 80 company in the portfolio. Previously, I was a co-founder CEO of Paprika Lab, which ran for about 4 years. And then we sold it to a Japanese company called Greed. They're publicly traded. Thankfully, it was a good deal for investors. And, so it was a good experience. And then this may upset a lot of parents on this call, but I also was a #1 professional gamer in Unreal Tournament in Korea. So I was obviously a terrible son and terrible boyfriend back then. But I stopped playing games. So hopefully not as bad as I used to be. But, still, when you run a startup, it's kind of similar, time sucking event. So, try to keep up with life. And then lastly, got Bachelor of Science from Computer Science at Seoul National. Did a lot of coding engineering back in the early days of startup. So with that said, maybe this audience may appreciate this, but we were featured in the front page of Chosun Chosun and we're one of the companies that was featured. So I think my dad sent me this photo. It's like, hey, I saw you. I was like, oh, people do read newspapers these days. But again, we're very grateful that our company was covered in this video. Anyway, with that said, let me tell you a little bit about what we actually do. Then we'll go into our story. So we believe conversations are at the heart of building relationships and getting things done. If you think about it, it's not about what we do as a technology company. Human beings always had conversations. Even before the invention of language, we always wanted to communicate with each other. And then as soon as any kind of communication or technology was invented, one of the very first use cases people build are always about enabling conversations. If you think about the Pony Express days, or even the invention of the telephone, dial-up modems, everything people wanted to do always was, how do we communicate with someone else and get access to information? But the other was always connecting with other people through the technology. So we believe this firmly. And then so we built an underlying infrastructure technology to help businesses harness this power of conversations right within their own mobile applications or websites. So we enable chat, just like you would use WhatsApp, iMessages, Kakao. We enable those underlying technologies. We have chat, we have voice calls, we have video calls. If you want to do live video streaming, you can also do that too using our technology. So we power apps like Reddit, the world's largest online community. So we power their communication piece behind the scene. Hinge, one of the largest dating apps here in the United States. We also power them. They're part of the Match Group. We have Patreon. We also power OkCupid, one of the OGs of dating apps, and a lot of other community apps. But we also power digital healthcare. this category exploded during COVID, obviously. So there's a lot of telemedicine, doctors talking to patients, patients talking to nurses and coordinators, healthcare professionals, mental coaches, etc. So we enable those conversations, and obviously Walgreens is one of the better known companies, but also like Teladoc and other publicly traded companies use us to power their communication piece. We also power a lot of entertainment use cases like fantasy sports. So next time you're doing fantasy sports, fantasy football, just know that we are behind the scenes powering that. We also power games companies like Nexon, Rakuten, well known for PUBG. They're also publicly traded in Korea. So we power a lot of gaming applications as well as live streaming entertainment. So these are some of the logos that we partner with. Like in fintech space, we have like PayPal in the United States. Again, DoorDash for food delivery. And recently also partnered with Hybe, which is like the company behind BTS. So very exciting. We power over 300 million people's conversations every month. So that's roughly the population of the United States, a little bit, almost getting there, 6 times the size of Korea, sending billions of messages on a monthly basis. We have about 300 people globally. And again, we have raised $220 million to date from world's renowned investors like Iconic Capital, Tiger Global, SoftBank Vision Fund, Emergence, well-known in B2B space, first investor in Zoom. And again, we went through the Y Combinator and Techstars, which is the world's #1 and #2 accelerators. So, which means we went through a lot as a company. But let me take you back 10 years when I used to be a little bit younger with less white hair. But this is where we started. So after selling my first company, I co-founded this second company with the buddies from my first startup. So we've been working together for 13, 14 years now across 2 companies. So these are 4 co-founders. We initially started out in Korea, and we went to our first startup competition where we won. We're the second place. First place was won by a company called Fleeto, which became the first company to go public in Korea under the new 기술 특례. It's like technology exception law, seems like. So they went public. We're the second place. And then this was the prize money. We obviously spent all of the money on food and drinks very shortly after. But anyway, that was our first win. But this was our first office. We rented a small office tel behind Samsung's Gangnam headquarters, about 300 square feet for working 5 people. But basically, this was also because it was an office that you can actually sleep in it. So one of my co-founders lived so far away, he actually had a sleeping bag. So whenever we ended work at, call it 1 a.m., we would walk out and he would pull out the sleeping bag from the closet and sleep on the floor because, in Korea, we have this beautiful system called ondol, warm floors. So he slept well. And in the morning when we'd come in, he would wake up and then basically take a shower in the bathroom while we started working. So that was our usual days back in the days. That was fun. And then as we grew, we kept looking for cheap or free co-working spaces. So after winning this competition, we worked out a place called DCamp, funded by Banks Foundation for 6 months, free office space. And then we applied to Maru 180, powered by Hyundai's foundations, where you only have to pay like $100 a month per person, which is like very cheap compared to any other place. So we worked out of there until we grew to about 20, 30 people. And then around 2015, we did not start out as SendBird. We started out as building community app for moms, but we were trying to build this messaging feature for our own app. That's when we kind of got this idea for SendBird. So with the same team, same company, same investors, we pivoted to SendBird in mid 2015. But because we were always scrappy, we ended up not just co-working, but we also started sharing desks because we were running out of space, but we didn't want to pay for extra space. So we started actually splitting the desk in half. So 2 people will be working on same desks. And this is like actually really fun if you're the one that's building it. If your boss tells you like, now you got to share a desk, of course, that's not fun. But if it's actually your company that you're building, this can be really, really memorable and fun experience because it shows that you're scrappy, but also shows that you're growing. And then basically me, packed up the bag, came to Silicon Valley, say, hey, you know what, we're going to build a global company. So we flipped our company from so-called Delaware flip. So basically we made a USA headquarters legally and Korea became the subsidiary. and I came here, and again, looking for cheap space. I looked for the cheapest co-working space in the entire Bay Area. Thankfully, we found one in Redwood City, subleased by a law firm, basically, or law firm had some empty desks. They were subleasing as co-working space. We couldn't really find a lot of information online, so I basically drove there. It's like they're like, "Oh, cool! How did you find us?" Like nobody finds us. I'm like, "Great, exactly why I came here," because we knew we could get better pricing. So we worked out of there for until we got raised Series A in 2017. But it was fun because given we're Korean, we worked extremely long hours. We came on the weekends. The law firm partner, Mr. Mark White, he's amazing. He's also works exceptionally hard. He was always there with us 10 p.m., 11 p.m. And he would come by kind of asking us like what we did. And he was very generous. Later on, when one of his private suites opened up, he said, you know what, you guys work too hard. I'll just like let you use a private suite at the same rate as the public space. So we actually started having dedicated desks, not a hot desk, dedicated desk in private suite at a very low fee, basically. So which was amazing. Again, we went through Y Combinator in 2016. January launched to the world, and we started growing there. A lot of people think the world's best accelerator is a cool experience, but it's basically you work out of your bedroom. So we we didn't have an proper office in San Francisco. Actually, this was yeah. So when four of us came, we had to live somewhere, and I had rented 1-bedroom apartment in San Francisco. So all of my co-founders, basically 4 dudes, lived out of 1-bedroom apartment. So 3 of us, slept on airbeds and sleeping bags on the floor in the living room. And one of my co-founder with the loudest snoring sound, he got the big bedroom, or not big, but basically bedroom. So this is my co-founder, back then CTO, now chief architect, debugging something at probably around midnight. Then we also found a free co-working space in San Francisco, part of Techstars benefit. So Techstars had a partnership with Microsoft, so they rented out free Microsoft Reactor office space. A lot of free snacks, a lot of free drinks, completely free, and we're basically like 1 out of 3 companies that were ever using it, and obviously we're using it the most. I think they shuttered the program immediately after we ended, so maybe we had one too many free snacks and drinks. We were basically emptying out the refrigerators all the time. So that was fun, but basically again, free office space, always be scrappy. And then we moved down to Mountain View because Y Combinator program was actually back then was running in Mountain View. Nowadays it's like San Francisco. So we also rented out Airbnb, and all 4 of us, now we had 2 bedrooms instead of 1 bedroom, which is fantastic. So, but our US team has grown to 5 people back then. So as you can see, a lot of cooking, alcohol drinking, and basically this place was so isolated. The only food restaurant nearby was Choi Sushi, like a Japanese restaurant run by Korean, and Subway. So we had like Subway all the time because it's cheap ass food. Plus we got a free coupon where you can buy one and get one free. So every time my co-founder would order sandwich, I get free sandwich. So, which is fantastic. So that's kind of how you run a scrappy startup. And then we pitched during the demo day, March of 2016, where we raised a small seed funding from the local investors. One of the investors later on was Justin Kahn. For those who might be familiar, he was a co-founder of Twitch, which sold to Amazon for $1 billion later on. And he was our group partner, and later on became one of our investors. And also we started selling in US. By the way, I've never done B2B in my life before SendBird. I've done B2C. So I'm like, okay, how do we sell? We're going to do what Koreans do best, is overwork. So when we were selling to Reddit, we basically had a meeting and we started just showing up on their office. Like from Monday, 9 a.m., we'd go to their office and start working there until like everyone left the building, until like midnight. Like all the Reddit employees have left. We kept working there, having meetings with them. And this was before they became our customer, before the contract ever happened. So one day we got an alert from their PMs like, hey, our security team is like asking, you guys are not our employees nor contractor, so you should not be like staying so late and then working too long. That's creating security, risks for them. So they're like, okay, we'll work with you. You just don't have to come in every day. Let's just have regular meetings until we sign a contract. So they became our customer, and still to this day, it's wonderful. So basically, working long hours, hard, long working hours help with sales. So I think working long hours is a global language. Not a popular opinion, but you got to do what you got to do. And in 2017, this was the private suite, the law firm that I mentioned. So we ended up raising $60 million Series A at the end of 2017. And these were wonderful investors. One of them have left the firm, joined another firm, but the guy on the right, or to my left on the photo, is Doug. He still sits on the board today. He's now at Iconic Capital. But anyway, so we raised $60 million. And then, funny side stories that we signed a term sheet at a beer pub because, why not? Silicon Valley, kind of create a movie-like scene. So we're negotiating terms. And Doug, he lived in Burlingame, so he lives in Burlingame. So he's like, oh, let's just meet at a pub nearby. And we order beer, we start drinking, and he pulls out a term sheet from his bag. It's like, John, is this what you want? I'm like, amazing. So we signed there, we had a beer. So that was a good, memorable moment. And this was our team around Series A, working out of the law firm. This was our team back in Korea, doing a lot of R&D. So about 25 people working at the company. And then we also joined a program called YC Growth Program, which is like the graduate school, basically PhD and master's program for YC companies. Much smaller batch. Instead of 100, 200 companies, 15 companies per batch. You get to meet a lot of great mentors. 3 or 4 mentors come in every week. You have dinners with them. You get to do Q&As. And then, on the photo is like Max Levchin, one of the PayPal mafias, and Tracy and Convoy CEO. But I met Tony at DoorDash, like a lot of billionaires and 100 millionaires came to kind of give us sessions, which is amazing. You get a lot to learn from. And then Iconic led Series B in 2019. So, they gave us a good chunk of money. Thank you. And so far, they're one of the largest investors in the company. And then they also serve on our board of directors. So, and also we signed the term sheet on the same pub. We actually told them, they asked to grab dinner. I'm like, oh no, sorry, I have a meeting, but we can grab beer afterwards. So they came. I intentionally invited them to the same beer pub. They had no idea. And then they actually came in with a term sheet with an empty valuation. They're so generous. They first gave us a pitch on why we should work with them. So you see the stick paper is actually not the contract, is their pitch on their analysis of SendBird as a company and their analysis of the market, competition, back channeling, everything was in there. And they also pitched why Iconic was a special company to work with, which is fantastic. Actually, that's what a lot of top Silicon Valley investors do, is they actually come and pitch you why we should take their money and how special they are and what are all the work they've done for SendBird. So, which is very, very impressive. They also pulled out a term sheet with empty valuation, basically a blank check saying, what is the number that you want that will get you to stop the process and take our money? So, we had a good valuation. We had a great valuation. I kind of pitched them on the great valuation. And they're like, okay, you got it. So we signed on the spot. Then we told them later, actually, this was a spot where we signed Series A. Another joyous moment, grab some beer. That was fantastic. I think it's around 2019 when we started having things like Revenue Summit, which is basically a sales kickoff. Again, not having done B2B before, I didn't know what sales kickoff meant. But our sales leader back then is like, this is what US companies do. So basically get sales leaders, marketing, like everyone together, fly people from all over the world to come in and do sales training over 3 days, marketing, product updates, and things like that. And this is like when I first saw our global team, not the entire company, but portion of basically our sales and marketing team together. And it was like very kind of inspiring because this is a company that I did not recognize. It's like, oh, cool. We actually are building a real company. Because before, as you can recall, we're working out of law firms and cheap ass offices. Now we start to feel like real company with swags and stuff like that. So that was really cool. And then in 2021, about a year and a half ago, we raised 100 million from Steadfast, Emergence Capital, SoftBank, Vision Fund, etc., to get to the unicorn status with raising $100 million. So we are very fortunate to have wonderful investors who are very, very helpful with customer introductions, recruiting, etc. So, and then now we host, happy hours in our APAC team. We have a beautifully designed office in Korea. Again, it's capital efficient. We didn't spend too much money on interior, but I think the design came out to be pretty wonderful. This is our US team. We had a team picnic last year. This one, actually, this is probably right before COVID, I think. So this was fantastic. And then dinner with the EMEA team, our European team. We have teams now in Singapore and India, but still growing. Very exciting times. And this is like stuff that I didn't realize. I never watched sports, still don't really. But when we start having customer events at baseball stadiums, I think that's a US culture. You rent out boxes and you invite customers and prospects. So I think this is the day when I actually learned how many players on a baseball team. I'm like, oh, cool. So thankfully, Giants won. So that was a fun moment. But for me personally, it's not about these fancy stuff like baseball boxes, but it's actually these small moments when we're having dinners and lunch with our team members and just seeing people connect and have dialogue. Those are the moments that really gives me the sense of purpose that we're building something special. We have great community, and that really fuels me to continue to work and strive harder. So that's a little bit of story of how SendBird became unicorn, what it kind of looked like in the early days, and then we are now marching forward. Thank you. I'll take any questions.
What a story.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's see if there are any questions. Again, you can use the reaction button, raise your hand. Oh, or you can just ask questions since we have a very nice group of people, and I don't think we may need this raise hand button.
Or you can drop any questions in the chat too.
Right. Okay, Ria, is that how you pronounce your name?
Yes, it is. So John, first I want to say thank you for telling us your story and coming out here and giving us this amazing talk. My question was seeing how busy you were in the early days and how many, it seems, sleepless nights and energy that you put in. What was it that kept you going in those early days without having this guaranteed success at the end and knowing that you are taking a large risk by doing this, but obviously there's potential for the success that you did eventually reach. What was it that kept your entire team dedicated and motivated to keep going at the rate that you were going?
Yeah, this is a fascinating topic, and I could probably answer from a very humane, emotional, touching way, but also from more like a scientific way, given the community. I personally I believe that having a dream, and dream is not like a goal, not like a milestone, but a direction that you can forever pursue. Personally, I have a dream that I believe in. So basically, I define civilization, a collection of things that people take for granted, like electricity, water. You don't even think twice about how it works, like internet nowadays, smartphone, mobile internet, right? So one of my personal dreams is to create something that's so universally accessible by people that people use on an everyday basis that people don't even think about who created it in the first place. And creating something like that and putting into this big pot of civilization and knowing that we did it, and I don't even have to get any recognition at all. I don't care about recognition. It's just that I know that we did something together to really contribute to civilization. That to me is a dream that I think is worth pursuing. So that kind of keeps me going, try to do this. And obviously technology and startup is a very efficient way of getting there. But when you think about motivations in general and also risk, a lot of people kind of think like startup is like high risk. It is, but it really isn't, especially when you're starting young, because the way I kind of did the math was before graduating college, I probably thought about it for 3 years, like what I want to do with my life. I interviewed a lot of people that went through the path that I kind of simulated. For instance, I always wanted to create a technology-based product, roll it out to the world, get feedback, and iterate on it. I had the early experience working for a company called NCSoft. So I knew that's something that I wanted to do, but I didn't know when I wanted to do it, in what form. Do I join a bigger company like Samsung and work there and then maybe start a company one day, or do I go to like McKinsey and get an MBA and do it after that? So I basically interviewed all of my people through the networks who went through those paths, right? Goldman Sachs, whatever those things are. And then basically I look at them, and actually there was a much greater risk once you're there. You have this fantastic career. Everyone's expecting something out of you. You have a wonderful lifestyle, living a great house, fancy home, kids, education. Now you have this massive burn rate. You got so much to lose. Whereas fresh out of college, you're like, you can live off of ramen. And then basically you because you're younger, you can work longer, get less sleep and still stay alive. You can drink and start working the next day. Nowadays, if I drink, like my next day is like ruined. But when you're 20s, like you can kind of do anything. So that was the lowest burn rate moment for me. And also, if you think about startup is not like doing a research. You actually have to try it out, see if it works. Just like riding a bicycle. No matter how many YouTube videos you watch, how many blog posts you read on riding a bicycle, you actually go out, got to fall down a few times, right? Get it going to learn from it. So I felt like startup was kind of like that. You had to try it. So obviously, if you're young, if your bone breaks, it heals faster. So I'm like, okay, I got nothing to lose. So I thought doing a startup immediately out of college was the lowest risk thing to do. So that's kind of my decision-making process. I actually made a decision tree calculator probability with the best of my knowledge, and turns out it was the lowest risk. So I kind of took that path. But from motivation perspective, dipping a little bit into like neuroscience of things, right? Motivation is about dopamine and being healthy, right? So how do you get your dopamine to going? You never want to attach your dopamine to the end result. It's not about money. And they say it's a cliche. Founders don't do it for money. They do it because of mission, and money follows you. But actually, from neuroscience perspective too, that's actually factually true. Because if you associate dopamine and motivation with money, it's a very depressing journey. There's so much pain. There's always an easier way to make more money quickly. It's such a painful way. If you think about it, it's like it took us 10 years. Most startups that ever reach any scale will usually take 10 years or more, most cases. Less than that are the exceptions. So 10 years with no visibility into any financial success at all, it's going to be a very, very painful journey if you associate motivation with the end results. So you actually have to associate your dopamine with the effort, the pain and the journey itself. So by leaning forward into that, you can actually enjoy the journey, enjoy the daily progress you're making, and the effort and the dream will keep you more motivated. So making sure that you also make sure that your people that you manage and lead are associating their, effort to the journey itself, the yearning and the desire, not my stock option is going to be worth $1 million. So now I can go buy a house. Like if you associate that with that, it's such a painful, miserable journey. So you got to really lean into, and that's a lot of startup journey ends up becoming a self-discovery process, because initially people think they know what they want until they actually try it out, and then it's like, oh shoot, this is not what I want. Just like discovering a good food at a restaurant. So a lot of people think startup is a glamorous journey. It really is not. But you also really learn so much about yourself, what you are actually good at, what you thought you were good at, but actually terrible at. And also you get to discover about what keeps you motivated, like what gives you meaning, and things that don't give you meaning because you started because like, oh, crypto is trending, so I got to do Web3 startup. Or now it's AI is trending, so I know nothing about AI, but now I got to get on that bandwagon. Those things almost always fail because people lose motivation, and the hype goes away after 2 to 3 years, almost every single hype. And then once the hype is gone, you realize you were riding the hype and it was not part of your core mission or desire. Then when the hype is gone, when you face your first real challenge, that's when like you want to give up. And a lot of startup founders give up on their journey 2-3 years in. So find something that you can work on for 10 years. And it doesn't have to be a hot industry. It just needs to give you enough meaning and purpose to be able to lean into that effort and associate your dopamine to the effort and the progress, not the end result. Then you can kind of keep going. That also kind of is one of the path to not getting burnt out or recovering from burnout, is not focusing on the result itself.
Great. That's great advice to no matter what you do, right? So it was
I guess.
True indeed. Okay, we have a Joseph Shin raise hand.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, good. Well, hi, John. Thank you.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry about that.
Take two.
Oh, all right, that's good. Hi, John. Thank you so much for your great presentation. I love your impressive history of the SendBird. I am Joseph. I'm an assistant professor at University of Washington, Tacoma, and I'm interested in the growth of your company. Well, I study entrepreneurship and especially tech companies, and I want to understand your take on the perception of a unicorn and how that changes your company and the perception of your stakeholders. So it seems like there's a lot of practitioners focus on bringing company to reach this unicorn status. Do you think is that relevant? Is that important? If so, how does that change before and after becoming a unicorn, internally and externally? Thank you.
To be completely frank, it's not important at all, but it's a very useful tool. So it's not important because it doesn't care. Your customer does not care if you're a unicorn, but if your product sucks, or if you're a unicorn, but your support sucks, they really don't care. They want to get good value from buying your software or buying your product, get a good service, pay a reasonable price, and they'll be happy. And then if you turn out to be a unicorn, great. But if not, like none of that really matters. So it's all about, if you think about building any successful organization, I think Bill Gates or Jack Welch said something very similar. You got to do three things well. One, make sure your customers are happy, customer happiness. Second is employee engagement. Some people call it employee happiness, but I'm like, come on, like we're not just trying to be happy. We want to make sure that employees are engaged and productive. Three is cash flow. Don't run out of money. If you do those three things well, almost everything will take care of itself. And then you may get the unicorn status, but unicorn is such an artificial status, right? And it's not as unicorn-ish as it used to be. Now it's getting rare again because of the market recession. But it does help with a lot with your employees' parents and spouses getting worried, which is a big factor. Your parents are like, oh, shoot, are you getting paid? Are you eating well? Are you sleeping well? And then you get a unicorn, and now the media covers you. All of a sudden, your parents think your company is this mega successful, stable company, which is like not. Your company's a very, it's a continuous being. But when you get to unicorn status, all of a sudden you feel like everyone thinks your company's like mature and stabilized. Again, which is not the case. So I think it helps with removing anxiety from the relevant stakeholders. But the actual employees, initially, when that news hits, maybe you get a little bit of that emotional kind of boost for maybe a couple of weeks of a month. But in reality, it's the actual work, right? It's the actual people you work with, actual customer you deal with, actual grind that's gonna be there for much longer. So unicorn, like from my perspective, unicorn is like nothing because it's old news. It's like, it doesn't matter. We just got to fix the problems and solve the problems in front of us. Unicorn's like history. And it's like, it's a milestone. So, yes, before getting to unicorn, it's like, oh, I wish you were one of them. And it's like one of those things like, oh, if I go into this university, I feel like my life is going to be solved, which is never true. Oh, if I get this, if I buy this car, my life is going to be so fantastic, which is never true. So again, associating dopamine with the status never works. So from that perspective, it doesn't really matter. All that matters is, are you consistently creating more value over time? And then if you do it fast enough, you become a unicorn, I think.
Great.
Hope that answered your question.
Yeah, certainly. It was a great answer to me. I learned quite a bit too from your answer. Next question will be by Gihyup Kim, joining from Korea.
Hi, John. I'm from Korea, and I am so excited to hear your amazing story on SendBird. Can you hear?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
You can hear me.
I can hear you fine.
And in the beginning, you just briefly commented that you want to go into the nuclear fusion as a
Yeah.
next career, in a sense.
Not
So
a career. I want to be an
I'm
investor. No.
as an investor or as a so as
Part of the
a
team would be
you want to
awesome,
go
but
to scientists and engineers.
more like a company builder. So like, for example, there's a
Mhm.
company called Helion, which I think you might be aware of,
Yes,
backed by Sam
yes.
Altman.
Mhm.
So I'm tracking those companies and trying to figure out like, because there are only like maybe 10 companies in the world that's trying to solve this. So not a lot. So hopefully I can partner, maybe invest and partner with one of those companies and be part of the action. I think that'd be,
I see.
very meaningful.
Okay. So so far over the last 10 years or so, you never have any job burnout on your venture.
So yeah, I think there's a degrees of burnout, but I haven't been burned out to a state where I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. Because
Mhm.
again, I believe in what we do actually needs to exist in the world, and I'm aligned. So actually, to give you an example, right? So my first company was a social gaming company. It did not start out as a gaming. It started out as a Web 2.0, creating connection for people, connecting people with similar interest. And then with the financial crisis in 2008, no investors wanted to invest in Web 2.0 companies anymore. But they saw my background. It's okay, you used to work for a gaming company called NCSoft. You're a programmer, used to be a professional gamer. If you create games, we'll invest. And I had already taken first angel check back then, so I didn't want to fail. I mean, failure is never an option. So, okay, so we're only going to invest if I create games. Then, okay, I will create games, but I want to add my own twist, which is social gaming, because I continue to try to help people connect with each other. So built social game for 4 years, got to 5 million users. But the reason I sold was because I did not believe in the mission. I did not believe in creating games was better. I mean, creating games, game has a place in human history. Because I played a lot of games, helps with intelligence, etc. But broadly speaking, I did not want to create value in gaming. Because there's really only two ways to create values in the world as a startup: either make life easier or make life more fun. Like if you're creating content, movies, music, games, all towards more fun. I personally find a lot more purpose in making life easier through technology. So I did not want to spend any more of my life on this angle. So that's the reason I sold my first company. It was like, okay, I'm done with this. I need to spend more time making life more useful and easier. So that's, if you call that a burnout, it is a burnout because I couldn't find, I didn't wake up feeling excited about what I do. I still love the people that I work with. That's why, I carry some of those people over to starting my second company. But the mission itself did not matter. With this one, particularly because of that strong bias towards the mission and the dream that's highly aligned to my personal dream, I think it gives me the opportunity to be a lot more resilient. Because there are ups and downs, right? Startup's like a roller coaster. But when I'm down, you think about the mission, why I started, and it kind of gives you that neural energy again, neural energy. So you get the dopamine back. But there are ups and downs, and you take maybe a couple of days off. But I generally don't believe in vacation. I'm like, we have weekends already. Why take vacations? But anyway, so that's a little bit that. But I've seen so many people, founders around me, my co-founders, a lot of early employees went through burnouts, depression, like severe depression. I don't know what 공황장애 is in English, but those
공황장애.
a lot of like gout, people with gout. Yeah, so just a lot of this mental illness arise from early stage founders. It's just like everywhere. People don't really talk about it, but you see it so often. I am at this point where I can see somebody going into depression, start a time clock, 6 months. Here's a recipe to how to get back out of it. takes 2 weeks off, 2 weeks off, 2+2. There's some methodologies to this madness. But usually most burnout happen in founders or early stage employees is when whatever they do, they feel like the future is not going to change. They feel like their lives will be miserable. Their output's not going to change. The results not going to matter. Their working environment is not going to change, no matter how well the company does, especially when the company's fundraising and like raising a lot of money, but they feel like they are still in the same kind of cartwheel. Then they really severely get into depression, especially if they have family issues. If their wife or spouse or whoever is not supporting them, they feel like they're fighting the war during the day. They came home, they're still fighting the war at home. Those go into depression really quickly. So you have to solve for one of them to be able to come back to the normal self. But then you have things like Big 5-factor model and personality assessments. Personally, I rank really low in neuroticism, like from scale of 0 to 100. I think I'm like 0 or 1. So low in neuroticism.
You are not married as yet? Are you married?
Oh, I'm married. I have 2 kids. I'm married. I have 2 kids.
You already have 2
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah, I met my wife 17 years ago at school or outside of school, but another story for another day. I have a very forgiving wife, as you can probably assume. But very low neuroticism, very high conscientiousness. So almost like my brain is wired that I can work long hours without getting a lot of stress. But if you flip that around, people with low consciousness and high neuroticism, they will get constant anxiety, constant stress. So joining an early stage startup or founding a company is really not for everyone, not because of capabilities, not about skill sets, just your personality. Some people are wired to have far more stress from the same stimulant, right? So you just have to pick your battles and, what is the life that you're okay living? I just happen to be the lucky in that regard that I like doing startups.
Thank you very much for the answer. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. We have Sebastian. I believe Sebastian is a high school student. Am I correct?
All right, let's do this.
Hello. Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah. Obviously, I guess my question was, sorry. So obviously you went to college, and then out of college you went to start your startup. How important was college to starting your company? And in this day and age, do you think that college is even that important if you have great ideas and you can learn yourself, I guess?
Yeah. I have a couple of multifaceted answer to this. One, the way I went to college was a little bit different because I was never a student, so I have extremely low agreeableness. Generally, I don't agree with anything. I mean, unless it's logically makes sense, right? So I didn't like the fact that somebody was grading me. Sorry to all the professors on this call. I didn't like the fact that I have to give answer to a problem defined by someone else, like humans. I was always more interested in nature, biology, physics. So I like to solve for I guess unknown problems that are not have been solved by humans so far. But with that said, the way I went to school, I took the very bare minimum essential classes to get through the school. But basically, I took a lot of master's and PhD classes, just dropped in those classes, like psychology, neuroscience, AI, architecture, the things that I got interested in. So I basically took a lot of master's and PhD classes because thankfully a lot of them were recognized as classes, at least in my school system. So did a lot of that. I actually went into electrical engineering as a major. They realized all the classes I took, I could actually get out of school faster by switching my major to computer science because I ended up taking more computer science classes. So I'm like, okay, if I make the switch, I can graduate sooner. So that's why I became a computer science major, but actually entered school as electrical engineering. So the way I took the classes, I think made me a lot more useful to have the school experience because I got to learn a lot of deep topics that you can't just Google online. With that said, I think school also benefits in one other way. Basically, school systems measure things like conscientiousness inherently. basically you prep for the test. If you get good grades, you have to study, you have to be disciplined. A lot of that is a qualifier for high conscientiousness. Now, not everyone obviously is highly conscientious, but that creates, especially if you go to any good enough school, a lot of students who are going there will generally have higher than average conscientiousness. So it's a good kind of environment to find your potential co-founders and colleagues in the future too. And also it continues to keep you through the peer pressure and culture. It raises your bar around the quality of execution. So when you write a paper, when you write an email, when you do your homework, if you are surrounded by smart, conscientious students, generally your expectation of yourself and your output increases too. And if you build that habit out of that, that generally carries also over to the real world professional experience. So some people it's like, oh, I'm going to be so good at this, whereas I'm just not going to care about other things. But actually, our personality is fairly consistent. It manifests consistently across your entire life. If you're organized, things like orderliness, right? So when someone is high in orderliness, they're not going to be orderly on one aspect. They're going to be orderly everywhere. The way they organize their computer folders, they write their papers, their homes, everything will be more orderly. They're low in orderliness, everything will be chaotic. So it's not like you can pick and choose. You have to artificially do it. And that's just like being so inefficient. So you have to kind of really understand your personality traits too. But again, going back to school, good enough school will kind of self-select and filter out students towards higher openness to experience, usually correlated to intelligence and conscientiousness. So you're basically have a better group of people with a higher chance of social and economical success. So why not hang out with those people? So in that regard, I think school does serve some purpose. And early in your career, whether you're fundraising, yes, investors do look at your school and et cetera. Now, does that actually care to results? Probably not. But statistically, again, high consciousness, high intelligence generally correlates to social and economical outcomes. So if you were to do a random bet, you'll get a better outcome with students coming out of better schools statistically. But startup is actually a game of exception. You're not betting 70% of the bets. You only get 1 to 10% of bets right in startups. So still, that is a different game that you're playing. So people just have to consider that into the thoughts when thinking about school. So unless somebody has an actual great idea that's generating real traction early on, generally, I would still recommend going to some level of structured education that puts you surrounded by people who are smart and who works hard. Whether it be school, online school, doesn't matter. Y Combinator is another example. It's kind of a school in itself, right? So, because acceptance rate to Y Combinator is like 1 to 1.5%.
Thank you, John. I have
kind of
a
answer your question.
That you started in Korea and came to Silicon Valley. What was the reason to expand to US?
The weather's nice here. Who doesn't like California? I didn't come to Silicon Valley. I came to this one. No, part of this joke. I lived in the state for 3 years when I was a kid. I was born and raised in Korea, lived there and grew there pretty much all my life. And then, but when I was like 12, I lived in New Jersey for like 3 years. That's when I got exposure to English and US culture and gang, what do you call it, graffitis and guns. I remember this like very vividly. Like obviously there's a huge cultural shock seeing this massive city with tall skyscrapers, a lot of graffitis on the walls. I'm like, this was like seen out of the movies. And then when I went back to Korea, I always had this desire to, play in the bigger market, be somewhere that's just bigger opportunities, bigger everything. And to me, that made an impression on me. So when I went back to Korea, generally I don't watch TV at all, but I basically consume zero Korean content, no Korean TV, no Korean whatsoever, no Korean drama. I actually watched my first ever Korean drama after starting SendBird because it was recommended by one of my US employees. She's like, it's so good, John, you have to see it. You'll understand Korean culture. Great. I was born there. But anyway, so stopped all my Korean content consumption, changed every single user interface or every single app that I ever use all into English. So so had to force myself to not forget English by switching everything to English. So wanting to come back to US and not forget, but the primary reason for SendBird, my first company too, the gaming company, we actually made games in English. So we most of our gamers were from US, US third, European third, and third was from Southeast Asia. So because it was English games, we always had this desire to come. And I think it was around 2009 when I came to San Francisco on a business trip for the first time. I'm like, I'm gonna be here. I want to be here. So I added that to my like annual plans. Okay, I want to be in US, start a company. But those are personal reasons. But company reason, this actually made more sense because for SendBird, we actually tried to fundraise in Korea and tried to sell to Korean market first. It was really, really hard because back then Korea did not have a cloud market. AWS has barely entered Korean market. There's no education cloud, public cloud whatsoever. So everybody did not trust putting data on the cloud. Two, there's no SaaS in Korea. Nobody paid for B2B software on a monthly basis, especially based around usage. B2B in Korea back then was SI. So you pay for development, you own the IP as a customer, and then next year you pay maybe 15% for maintenance. So people did not understand the concept of paying for software, same amount on a monthly basis, and actually pay more as you use more. So customer market ready was not there. To investors too, were like, why shouldn't just Samsung develop this? Like Samsung SDS or whatever SI vendors. And they too did not understand cloud or SaaS market. Whereas when I came here, I started selling to customers, like everybody immediately got it because back then there was already Salesforce, AWS done the market training, Twilio's there. So the market was ready. The SaaS market was there. Pricing model was well understood. Investors completely got it because they've seen the Twilio, skyrocket to its growth. So raising money was actually easier. Selling to customers was easier. And also, if you think about it, any kind of B2B companies are generally not dependent on local regulations or culture. Like other consumer apps where there's a heavy dependency on culture, it's harder to go expand internationally. But for B2B tech-driven company, if you have a successful, great product, you can probably go to any country and start selling there as long as you hire local marketers and salespeople. Your product does not need to be localized a lot. So that creates a risk if we are building this out of Korea, because one day a bigger, better funded Silicon Valley company will one day recognize that, oh, Korea is an interesting market, let's go there. We'll get wiped out very quickly. That happened repeatedly in the past in Korean markets too. So we knew that it's just a matter of time. It's a matter of time when we die. So instead of waiting for that to happen to us, why don't we actually come to Silicon Valley, find our unique niche to differentiate and be a number one in our own segment so that we can get that funding. We can be that 500-pound gorilla instead of being crushed by one of those, which was, in retrospect, could be a crazy bet, but kind of worked out. So now we are kind of the biggest fish in this space.
Okay. Let me hold on. My phone was ringing. Sorry about that. Let's have one more question, and then actually there's also another one question in the chat box, but you can take that later. So let's go with Lee. Is that how you pronounce the name? Lee Na?
Leah?
Leah? Oh, did I lose her?
Yeah. Oh, hello. My name is Leah, and thank you so much for your speech today. And the most impressive part today, personally, was about how you thought about communication. Any kind of communication is really important. So I would like to ask, what do you think is the most important communication ways or strategies you use to communicate with your coworkers or between other like clients and partnership brands?
Yeah. Like all the other answers, there's multiple ways to approach this answer, but I think the better, kind of more useful tool is to think about your mission, your core values, and then your philosophy of leadership around it, right? So we have a mission, right? Connecting people digitally, and then our core, we have 7 core values: endless tenacity for customers, better than the best, box up here. So we have this set of core values that we actually look for when we do recruiting. So it all starts from when we start to hire people, bring people into the organization. When we onboard them, we talk about core values all the time. during the week, on every single weekly stand-up, we celebrate core value champions who best represent a certain core value. We celebrate those stories. So we really try to center our theme around where we headed, the mission, the vision of the company, what it's going to look like, where we want to go as a goal, what are the strategies to get there, and how are we going to actually get there by demonstrating these core values, how we behave. And then we continue to cherish and nurture those stories. And what is the leadership philosophy to back that all up? And all of that has to kind of all align to a coherent story. Let's say you are a dictator style for whatever reason, but you say you have this servant leadership, but your communication is very top down, never take feedback. And if they don't like all align, people are like, what is this? They get confused and it doesn't come off as authentic. And you can't fake it too long. So you have to really do a lot of introspection around who am I as a person? Who are we as the founders? And what does the early organization, the first 20 employees will dictate pretty much all of your DNA for your company for almost in perpetuity. So you have to really think about the early employees. How do they demonstrate your core values so that you can use those stories to continue to nurture your culture and use that as a fabric of your conversation. So to give, again, going back to our example, we have this leadership framework. We didn't invent it, but there's obviously a popular called servant leadership. So basically, reverse pyramid structure. We put customers at the top. Employees are trying to best serve the customers. Managers are trying to best serve and enable the employees to best serve customers. So the executives are at and I myself is at the very bottom of the pyramid. So it's that service mindset. So this has to show in your daily actions, right? When I communicate, when somebody's like organizing the kitchen, I go there and help them out if I have time. I don't like pretend that I'm a more important person, like, oh, that's for that person. Like we actively try to encourage people to go and help out to show that we are actually serious about being servant leadership. So I would be the one that's cleaning the toilet. I would be the one that's ordering things on Amazon. First, if nobody knows what to do, I'll be the one that's taking the responsibility. Now, some people can come and challenge like, oh, but that's like CEO's time so valuable. You should not waste your time on those things. But everyone has pockets of time to demonstrate your leadership principles and your core values. So I use those opportunities to show that we are very, very serious about this. If CEO is doing it, like who else is like not going to be like saying no to that, like, right? So it's really demonstrating that through actions. So we also share that through visualization. There's a famous meme on the internet where leaders are leading from the front, whereas the boss is sitting at the chair, like pointing people, it's like, go there. We try to lead from the front. So we expect the leaders to work harder, work longer hours, be available to the people that they're serving. So when people try to have a meeting with me, thankfully now I have an EA, so I can have more meetings. But I actually tell them, like, I'm like an Uber driver. If you need me at a customer meeting, just holler, I'll be there to serve you and the customer. So making yourself as someone who's ready to serve you to do your job better is you have to show that through your actions and your communication. And that has to show in your, again, in actions, your Slack messages, your email, that all has to connect. Otherwise, you'll quickly become a hypocrite and, people will not lose trust in you. So the consistency, I think, matters a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, well, it's too bad we running out of time and we hit 1 hour mark. So I would like to end this very thoughtful conversation, John. You have very, amazing philosophy and all life lessons, and I think it's quite valuable to all of us. And I'd like to thank you again. Let's give John another big round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So there are a couple of questions in the chat box. What I will do is I'll grab them and I'll send those questions to you by email, if that's okay with you, John. When you have a moment, you can answer.
Yeah,
and
I'll try.
I know.
But I first have to serve our customers and our team members.
Right.
But yeah, thank you for having me. Hope everyone have a happy new year. And wish you best of luck on everything and nuclear fusion for humanity.
That's right. Thank you. So thank you, everyone. Our fourth distinguished guest series will take place on February 9th. Topic is AI for sciences and society. So this will be led by two professors, one Daniel Lee from Cornell and Suyeon Jung from New York University. So again, I hope many of you will join that event. Thank you very much all. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you again, John.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, folks.